My dad called my career Fitlthy and cut me out of the family fortune, then asked me for $150,000 when my brother wrecked the family business. You'll regret this when your golden son burns your kingdom to the ground, I told my dad the last time we spoke. He laughed. He actually laughed. Like the idea of my brother failing was somehow physically impossible. Like I was the punchline to my own pathetic joke. But 2 years later, there he was, red-faced and trembling, asking me for $150,000 like it was a cup of sugar. Let me rewind. My name's Kayla. I'm 32, I live in Chicago, and I'm in adult content creation. Yeah, that kind. Before you start forming judgments, just know I've built my business from scratch. No sugar daddies, no handouts, just hustle, marketing, and a deep understanding of how to sell without selling yourself short. But to my father, a conservative, image-obsessed businessman from suburban Pennsylvania, my work wasn't just shameful, it was filthy. His word, not mine. I was the eldest daughter in a family that worshipped the family name like it was a religion. Dad ran a chain of car dealerships, Mom managed appearances, pearl necklaces, polite smiles, and passive-aggressive Bible verses. And then there was Adam, my younger brother, the heir, who never had to try a day in his life. He was handed everything, car, job, condo, all with one unspoken rule: don't embarrass the family. I broke that rule. When my OnlyFans blew up during the pandemic, I kept it low-key. No real name, no face at first. But success has a way of leaking. One day, my cousin's fiancé accidentally mentioned he subscribed to someone who looked suspiciously like me. That one slip snowballed. Dad demanded a meeting. He didn't yell. That would have been too human. No, he sat me down, stared at me like I was roadkill, and calmly told me I was being cut out of the family will. We can't have this stain on our legacy. I remember every word. You're talented, Kayla, but this is a phase, a dirty one. When you're done embarrassing yourself, maybe we can talk. I walked out of that house and didn't speak to my family for a year. No birthdays, no holidays, nothing. I built my brand, launched a website, partnered with other creators. I paid off my student loans, bought my own place, donated to causes I care about. I was thriving. Meanwhile, Adam was being groomed to take over the dealerships. Except he didn't want to run them. He wanted to party. Expensive cars, shady friends, and God knows what else. I heard rumors, but I wasn't close enough to confirm. Until my father showed up. It was a Thursday afternoon. I had just finished recording a podcast episode about financial independence when I got a knock at my office door. And there he was, my father, holding his dignity together with duct tape and pride. Kayla, he said, voice low. I wouldn't come if it wasn't serious. I didn't invite him in. I just stood there. It's Adam. He made some decisions. The business is in trouble. He didn't say the number at first, but when I pressed, 150,000, I almost laughed, almost. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, heartbeat steady. You're telling me, I said slowly, that after disowning me for running a legal, profitable business, you're now here asking me for 6 figures to save Adam from blowing up yours? Dad's face twitched. I could see him swallowing his pride like poison. I know we've had our differences. Differences? I cut him off. You called me disgusting, said I was dead to the family. And now because your golden boy can't keep his cocaine and company separate, I'm suddenly worthy of a visit? I could see the shame in his eyes, but it wasn't guilt, it was desperation. And that made me angry. Not for the money. I could write that check and forget it tomorrow. It was the hypocrisy, the selective morality. How my work was filthy, but his theft by nepotism son was a victim of pressure. I let him talk. He told me how Adam had funneled dealership funds into a crypto scam with his college buddy. How 2 locations had to shut down. How lawsuits were looming. and how the family's name was on the verge of ruin. What about your legacy? I asked, biting. Isn't that more important than my dirty little business? He winced. Kayla, please. I know I was wrong. I judged you, but you're doing well. You can help. There it was. The truth. I was useful now. And only now. Flashback. I remembered being 16, building my first website, excited to show him. He glanced at it and said, "Cute, but that won't pay bills. Focus on real skills." I remembered him beaming at Adam just for existing. I remembered crying in my college dorm when he didn't show up for my graduation, because Adam had a minor sports injury that needed attention. And now this man had the audacity to ask me for help. Not with humility, not with apology, but entitlement. So I asked, if I were still making filthy content, would you be here? He didn't answer, just looked away. Thought so. I stepped back and started closing the door. I'm not your daughter when it's inconvenient, and I'm not your bank when it's desperate. His hand stopped the door. You'll regret this. One day, you'll wish you hadn't turned your back on your family. I didn't blink. I already did that. And it was the best decision I've ever made. Then I shut the door. Not in rage, in power. It didn't take long for the fallout to start. 2 days after slamming the door on my father, my aunt texted me a cryptic, "Call me, now." Before I could even type a response, my phone lit up with a string of missed calls from family members I hadn't heard from in years. People who once ignored me at holidays now suddenly remembered I existed. The reason? Simple. My father was on a smear campaign. He said you refuse to help because you're too arrogant now, my aunt whispered over the phone. He said the money you make is shameful and that your success is built on exploiting people. I laughed. A short, bitter one. He didn't mention the part where he called me garbage, disowned me, and told everyone I was a disgrace for building a 6-figure online business. Silence. Then a sigh. Number. Of course he didn't. I knew how this worked. My family had always been experts at rewriting history to suit their version of events. When Adam cheated on every girlfriend he ever had, he was just young and confused. When I dared to post a picture in a bikini during my startup launch, I was troubled and attention-seeking. My father had trained them all to speak in half-truths and sugar-coated double standards, but not this time. That night, I did something I never thought I would. I went public, not with rage, not with vengeance, but with the truth. I wrote a post. It started simple. This is for the relatives asking why I refused to loan $150,000 to the father who disowned me. Then I laid it out. I told the story they refused to hear, about how I put myself through school, about how I built a business from my tiny apartment while eating canned soup, about how I wasn't invited to family holidays because my success made them uncomfortable, and finally, about how the man who called me filthy for creating adult wellness content now came begging when his favored son destroyed the family name. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. The internet connected the dots. Fast. Within a day, the post blew up. Thousands of comments, shares, private messages from strangers who had lived the same story, being the black sheep until money changed the narrative. People saying, "Thank you for standing your ground. Thank you for not folding." And best of all, a message from Adam's ex. Your brother used to laugh at your success. I'm glad you got the last word. Maybe it wasn't the last word, but it was the first time I felt like mine finally mattered. 3 days after my post went viral, my mother called. I stared at her name on the screen like it was a ghost. She hadn't reached out to me in over a year, ever since I told her I wouldn't pretend Adam was some golden child anymore. But now she suddenly remembered my number. I answered on the 5th ring. "Kayla," she said, her voice cracking with forced emotion, "do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" Not hello, not are you okay, not even the faintest acknowledgement of my side of the story. "I told the truth," I replied calmly. "That's more than I can say for you or Dad." She scoffed. truth? You aired our dirty laundry like some influencer scandal. Your father is devastated. Your brother, he can't even leave the house without people whispering. Maybe he shouldn't have crashed $1 million business into the ground, I snapped. And maybe you shouldn't have covered it up for him. That's when her tone changed. She dropped the tears, slipped into something colder, sharper. You've always been dramatic, ever since you were a child. This need for attention, it's exhausting. Ah, there it was, the script. Whenever I said anything that didn't fit the family narrative, I was dramatic. When I cried about being left out of vacations, I was selfish. When I pointed out that Adam got a car at 16 while I worked double shifts just to afford tuition, I was jealous. And now that I refused to pay to fix their disaster, I was punishing them. I'm not the one who cut ties, I reminded her. Dad made that choice. You just stood by and watched, she sighed. He was angry. You know how he is. But deep down, he still loves you. I almost laughed. Funny kind of love, asking your disowned daughter for $150,000. There was silence on the other end. Then, almost as a whisper, we thought you'd grown up. That you'd do what's right for the family. And that's when I realized the full weight of it. In their eyes, I'd never be more than a resource. A walking ATM. The daughter they only acknowledged when things went wrong, when Adam failed, and when their empire cracked. So I said the one thing I knew would cut deepest. I did grow up, and I finally learned the difference between family and obligation. Then I hung up. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about it. A week after the phone call, I got an invitation in the mail. Yes, actual mail. My mother must have thought the drama had cooled down enough to switch strategies. It was for a family reconciliation brunch, held at my parents' country club. Dress code, formal. Tone, manipulative. There was a handwritten note attached. Let's talk. As a family, we can move past this. Love. Mom. For a split second, I considered throwing it away. But then I thought, no, I'll go. Not for them, but to finally say what I'd been holding back for years. No shouting, no texts. Just the truth, clean and quiet, and mine. The day of the brunch, I wore black. Not to be dramatic, but symbolic. A quiet funeral for the version of me that kept chasing their approval. When I arrived, Adam was already there. No hello. He just looked up from his mimosa with that smug, bruised pride look, as if I'd done something to him. My dad, of course, acted like nothing had happened. Kayla, he boomed, standing up. Glad you could make it. I didn't hug him. My mom patted the seat next to hers like it was some kind of truce offering. I sat across from them instead. The food came. They chatted about meaningless things. My cousin's wedding, real estate prices, the weather. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. Listen, about what happened. Things got a little heated, but let's not let money come between us. I stared at him. You mean the $150,000 you asked me for after calling my job filthy and cutting me out of the will? My mom flinched. That was emotional. Your father was under stress. Adam jumped in. It's not like you can't afford it. You made your point, okay? And there it was. They didn't want forgiveness. They wanted compliance. So I stood up. And for once, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I said, I came here thinking maybe you'd understand why I was hurt. But all you really want is for me to fix what Adam broke and pretend it never happened. I pulled out a small envelope from my purse. Inside, a check for $1. I handed it to my father. Here, my official contribution to the family business? He blinked. Is this a joke? No, I smiled. It's exactly what I owe a family who treated me like a backup plan. Then I walked out. That was the last time I saw them. It's funny how quiet life becomes when you cut out the noise pretending to be love. After that brunch, I blocked their numbers, deleted the family group chat, even unfollowed my mother's Facebook where she constantly posted inspirational quotes about forgiveness and unity. Ironic, considering she once told me, "You'll always be second to your brother, that's just how it is." At first, I felt lost, like I'd slammed a door but forgotten to build a new one. No matter how justified my decision was, I still grieved the family I'd hoped to have. The version I'd constructed in my head, the one that valued effort over appearances, honesty over tradition. But slowly, I started filling that silence with people who showed up for me. My partner, Taylor, reminded me what unconditional support actually looks like. They didn't ask why I didn't just move on. They handed me a cup of tea and said, "Grieve, be angry, laugh if you want. You don't owe anyone your silence." My friends, real friends, not the curated high school leftovers my mom approved of, sent memes, dragged me out dancing, helped me rearrange my apartment. I hosted dinners, laughed till I cried, and told stories without bracing for judgment. And work? It thrived. The backlash I feared never came. Turns out, when you pour years of work into building something from scratch, people respect the result more than your bloodline. Then, something unexpected happened. I got a call from a journalist. She was writing a piece on self-made entrepreneurs who broke away from toxic family systems. A mutual friend had told her about me. At first, I hesitated. Publicly airing out the story felt messy, petty even. But then I remembered how many people sit in silence, convinced their pain doesn't count because it wasn't that bad. How many daughters are told to sacrifice, sons are told to man up, and siblings are expected to clean up messes they didn't make. So I said yes. The article went viral. Hundreds of messages poured in, strangers sharing their own stories, thanking me for putting into words what they'd never dared say aloud. One girl wrote, "You helped me walk away from a family that made me feel small for dreaming." And that was the moment I realized, maybe the family I left behind was never mine to begin with. Maybe the one I'm building now, through honesty, boundaries, and real love, is the only one that matters. It was a rainy Tuesday, the kind of day when everything feels heavier and the sky refuses to pick a side between storm or stillness. I had just wrapped up a pitch meeting and was settling into the quiet of my apartment when I heard the knock. Not a polite tap. A desperate, uneven knock that made my stomach tighten before I even reached the door. I opened it, and there he was. My father, soaked to the bone, holding a tattered envelope in one hand and a look in his eyes I couldn't place. Something between shame and defiance. "Can we talk?" he asked. Every part of me wanted to say no, wanted to close the door on every word, every dismissal, every time he called my work filthy, every time he gave my brother a pass, while holding me to a standard that shifted like sand. But instead, I stepped aside. He sat on my couch like it was foreign terrain, eyes scanning the room as if trying to locate the version of me he thought he knew. "I read the article," he said, finally. "Didn't think you'd tell people all that." "Didn't think you'd give me a reason to," I shot back. He looked away. "I didn't come here to argue." "Then why are you here?" He pulled out the envelope. "The business. Your brother's mess. It's worse than I thought. We might lose everything. And, well, your mother thought maybe you'd want to help." I laughed, not the amused kind, the hollow kind, the kind that bubbles up when disbelief crashes into betrayal, and all you can do is laugh to keep from screaming. "You disowned me, publicly, cut me out of the will, called my work disgraceful, and now you want a handout?" He flinched but didn't deny it. "Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep because of you?" I said, voice trembling. "Do you know what it's like to hear your father say he's ashamed of you just because you didn't turn out the way he wanted?" He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. I begged for your approval, for years. I showed up, I stayed quiet, I worked hard, and you never saw me. You only saw the mold you wanted me to fit. And now that mold is broken, your golden boy shattered it. And suddenly, I'm valuable again? The silence between us was deafening. He stood, slowly. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I had to ask. I nodded, and I had to say no. As he walked to the door, he paused. You've built a good life, he said. Better than I gave you credit for. I looked him in the eye. I didn't build it for credit. I built it to survive. And with that, I closed the door. But this time, it didn't hurt. The days after my father's visit were quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the heavy, echoing silence that settles when a lifelong storm finally ends. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I just felt free. No calls came, not from my parents, not from my brother. For once, the chaos wasn't mine to clean up, and that was oddly comforting. One evening, I walked past an old bookstore near my apartment and saw a little girl tugging her mother's hand, begging for a book about space. The same way I used to. My chest tightened, not with regret, but with remembrance. There were still parts of me that belonged to that little girl. And maybe, finally, I was making peace with her. I started writing again. Not for work, for me. Late one night, a text from my mom came through. Just one sentence. I wish we had seen you sooner. No excuses, no asks, just that. I didn't reply. Some wounds don't heal with words. They heal with time. Or never. But what mattered most? I wasn't bleeding anymore. Weeks passed, and I received a formal email from my family's lawyer. It simply stated that my name had been added back into the trust. No one asked me. No apology attached. Just reversed. But I didn't care anymore. Not because I didn't value it, but because I didn't need it. I had built something for myself, on my terms. I wasn't someone's disappointment anymore. I was someone's example. And sometimes, that's the only revenge you need. I visited the beach a week later, sat on the same bench I used to visit in college, back when dreams were fragile things, and I still craved my father's pride like oxygen. Now, I just watched the waves and whispered, "You were wrong about me, but I'm glad, because proving you wrong helped me find out who I really am." And as the wind picked up and carried those words out to sea, I knew something else too. This was the end of their chapter in my story, but not the end of mine.